Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome out to Cabinet. It's September. You can see, we all can see so many people. Welcome to the room. And first of all, apologies for absence. One apology from Councillor Cox. This time. One apology from Councillor Cox and Councillor Strachan is on his way, so he'll be joining us. Hopefully before the first substantial item on the agenda. We might move that around. Am I right to do that? If everyone's like, we'll rejiggle the agenda to accommodate that. Okay, second item on the agenda then is declarations of interest.
Thank you, Chair. I'm declaring a personal interest for item 6 at the Transforming Planning Service proposal. That's due to my nomination as Director of Victoria Western Trade Services. I will take part in it because it's delegating responsibility to you as leader, so I don't believe it's pecuniary or yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Brilliant, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare the same interest, a personal interest. I'm a current director of our OEM company.
Thank you, Chair. And just again to declare the same interest in item 6 as I'm a director of our
Thank you, Kerry. I'm going to look at our monitoring officer, make sure he's okay with all of that. That's just what's going on. Happy that we get, and everyone's okay to participate in the power electric. Any more interest to declare at this point? No, brilliant. As ever, if they arise during the meeting, please feel free to interrupt the flow to make sure that you declare that interest. Let's skip the first item on the agenda, then, which is the Money Matters 23-24 financial monitoring. And Councillor Strachan will talk us through that once he arrives. Let's jump straight on to agenda item number 4, which is the local plan update. Councillor Bell, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So I present to Cabinet a positive proposal to rethink our housing approach in the district, and I'd like to recommend the full council that we withdraw the local plan 24 from examination. That's a bit of history about how we got to this stage. The local plan 2040 was submitted to the government for examination in June 2022, and the inspectors issued a number of questions about the plan shortly after. The examination of the plan is currently paused. Officers have been working to address some of the questions raised by the inspectors. Members may be aware that the decision to submit the plan was contentious, and indeed the plan itself has been contentious throughout the development, with many residents and other stakeholders strongly opposing certain aspects of the plan. I heard a lot of opposition to the local plan while speaking to people ahead of the last elections. I'm sure many of the councillors said the same. Since the elections in May 2023, there's been an opportunity to reflect on how the council should proceed with the local plan, whether the submitted plan is the right one for the district, or whether the council should explore different spatial approaches to guide the development of digital districts in the future. As the local plan 24 has all been submitted for examination, there are effectively 2 options available for us as council. Option number 1 is to continue to progress the local plan 2040 through the examination, the likelihood being that that plan would be broadly similar at the end to that which has been submitted so far. And option 2 is to withdraw the local plan for examination in order for the council to start work on a new local plan for the district. Having regard to the potential risks and issues of withdrawing the plan and the exciting opportunities, of course, which withdrawal may bring, all of which are detailed in your report, I am recommending to Cabinet that the local plan 2040 be withdrawn from examination so that the district council can begin the process of preparing a new plan for the district. And look for a seconder and welcome any questions.
Great, thanks, Councillor Farrell. We'll save a second before council, I think, but I'll give it a good airing, I think fair to say. Questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Farrell as well for that introduction. I do think it's important that we recognise and reflect the changing environments that we are living in and working in. Couple of questions from myself on this part. Given that we've had a significant amount of development in the area, which actually wasn't necessarily supported locally, but we were overruled centrally, what engagement has been done, needs to be done with government agencies with regards to the development of what comes next? Will be my first question, if I can.
Yes, good question. So If the council do decide to withdraw the local plan, then operators will ensure that it's done in accordance with all the regulations set out. And those who must be notified will be notified. The inspectors appointed by the government have already been made aware that we're considering withdrawing the plan. So we'll continue to update them. Civil servants and deal and other civil servants involved will monitor our local plan examination. And if they're in contact with the officers and the council constantly. So we've been in contact with the government, advised them of where we are, and we'll just be in constant dialogue.
Yeah, if I could, yeah. So I just think we need to be clear as well on potential risks. I know you mentioned risks in your opening introduction there, but with regards to the development of the new local plan and the time factors involved, can we have a bit more clarity on what those potential risks are and how we could mitigate against them most importantly?
Yeah, there are risks. I mean, lots of them are detailed in the report. The key risk, I suppose, while progressing a new local plan is that the council is going to be without an update policy framework for longer than would otherwise be the case if we continue the plan. So it could mean that the council is at greater risk of special planning applications being granted, losing appeals, that kind of thing. Over time, the council's housing land supply position and our housing delivery will start to decrease as those sites already allocated complete. But the longer it takes to identify new sites within the local plan, the more risk there is the council's housing land supply worsens to the point where we can't demonstrate a 5-year supply. I don't believe that will be the case because we currently have a 9.5-year supply, and the officers don't think that it is a risk, but not one I think that we should be in danger of getting to. So a risk in relation of the change in national policy, that's something we can't really affect the council. For example, a revised national planning policy framework was expected to be published by the government this summer. It's yet to be published. So if national policy shifts or changes significantly, that will have impact on the new plan. But there are other councils in that position, so I have confidence that we're okay. There are risks, of course, but I don't think we should do that.
Councillor Smith, actually.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, Janice has got a couple of things I was going to ask. So firstly, I'd just like to say, before I ask my questions, I do fully support the proposal on the paper. I think it's no secret that I was against the creation and submission of the plan that is just being submitted, and for a number of reasons. But mainly, I think we're here as an authority to do what our residents expect of us, and I know our residents are against any more suburban crawl out from our current residential police areas, cities, towns, villages, etc. But I do have a couple of questions just to test our sort of logic on this and to see what may have changed on the horizon. So I read in this paper, I remember we were told lots of time before that there was a 2023 end of 2022 deadline, I think, to basically resubmit a new version of our local plan. Now that the current plan we've got, I know, is end of 2029. What's changed to mean that we no longer need to do this sort of end of 2022 revision? Have we looked into, is it due to the number of houses we've currently built in that period? What's going to change to mean that's acceptable to us?
Yeah, give you an answer. The officer might
Sure.
expand on that, but in my opinion, the 2023 was a deadline provided by national government as a target for all councils to have their local plans in place. So national planning policy requires authorities to review their local plans every 5 years. So a plan may have an end date, for example, after 2029.
Yeah.
It'll need to be reviewed before that date anyway. So it's just a target set by the government, which is what we're going for, but then we'll count on it.
Got it. Okay. Second thing, I know this is something that Kevin and I were passionate about before. For me, a fundamental part of the local plan, i.e., which houses and where they're going to be built, and in this current day and age, should include a lot about the green agenda and what we combat climate change. And for me, we didn't put enough strength in the plan that has just been submitted to that extent. What can we do for the green agenda we put in that local plan to really hammer down on what developers have got to do in terms of what they can do to the new house build, so such as solar panels, electric charging points. How far can we go in this new plan to really nail that down to make sure that all new houses are built with that in mind?
Yes, good question. I agree with you. Your council has got really well in position. I think it's a really important aspect of what we do going forward, and basically go as far as what we do within reason. It also ties in with our design code that we're currently working on as a council. So hopefully the two will work in parallel. We'll consider a range of policies, obviously including those which seek to set standards for new buildings and respond to our climate emergency that we've done as a council. Obviously, the building regulations which are controlled by government set the standards for which new homes should be built, but there's no reason why we as a council can't set different priorities to demand on that. But yeah, it's very important agenda. I'll be pushing that in the new plan.
Cool, brilliant, Alex. Right. Cheers. Yeah, the next one I think Janice has covered, which is what consultation we've done with the relevant government department on can we go down this route, how that makes sense. That's all. We'll skip past that one. Just the last one I really wanted to say was again during the whole debate we had during the submission of LP 2040 that was submitted to everybody. I did ask a question a number of times about why don't we go down the route of a new settlement to satisfy the district's future housing requirements or addition until 2040, because that always seemed to me to be the best way to go, because we're not doing urban sprawl. We are ensuring that the infrastructure has to be put in place because effectively it's in the middle of a big green area in the middle of nowhere, not on a current place. We have to basically the amenities would have to be put in first, and the infrastructure. And I always found that was a really good way to go. But I was told a number of times that we could not do that. I'd just like to understand, has something changed now, or have we just got a different view on it, or have we just consulted different people? And are we again? Are we happy that's a better way to go? And will that give us the housing supply in time? I think you probably the same question.
Housing supply, yes, I believe so. And funds to start working on it as soon as possible. It's a good question. Why was it done before? I don't know. I'm the new kid on the block, but I'd imagine that it's a route. Lots of our colleagues want to go down. So I think with a bit of gentle persuasion and a new look on things, I think it's the right policy. I mean, there was a different landscape obviously at the time in relation to national policy. When we stood before, but I think the council had considered a wide range of evidence, had asked these questions, and a new settlement idea. I think at the time wasn't seen as deliverable with the time scales involved, but I think a fresh new look at it and with a bit more freedom of national policy. Yeah, I think it's the right way to go. We haven't started on a new local plan at the moment, obviously, because we're in the process of trying to withdraw from it. But when we do, my priority is pushing new settlement option, as well as lots of other spectral options as well. But yeah, I think going forward, a collective vision has agreed that it's possibly a better direction.
Cool. Okay. Thanks, Alex. Chair, that's me done.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Chairman. If I may just first expand a bit on the design code. Clearly, we need to make sure that climate change and the ecology agenda are reflected in our new design code. So we will be putting lots of suggestions forward to the team that are building the new design code. And I do know that the task group, when we meet on the 20th of September, will equally want to make sure that things feed into that new design code, to make sure that we are doing all that we can to make sure that the development industry actually respond to the climate change agenda and make sure that we're moving forward on that. Just whilst I welcome this paper, just a couple of issues I just wanted to sort of tease out. First of all, obviously a lot of work and time has gone into the plan that we already had in place, and a lot of evidence gathered was put into there. Will that evidence be able to be transferred into the new plan when we start to draw that up, or do we have to go back and find that evidence, or can we use evidence that we've had previously? That's the first question. And then the second question, if I may, neighbourhood plans. I'm sure the city council, Brentwood Town Council and parish councils all around the district will be slightly concerned as to much as they have neighbourhood plans in place, which one of the requisites are that they fall in line with the district local plan. I just wonder what sort of message we need to make sure we get out to these organisations to make sure that, or at least to give them some sort of comfort that the neighbourhood plans that they have in place are okay, or do they need to look at perhaps reviewing their neighbourhood plans? Those are the two questions, Chair, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, really good points, Councillor Wilcox. On the design code, I'm really in favour of the green agenda on that. So we'll cover that at a later meeting, I'm sure. The question about the evidence. So obviously aspects of the evidence base which underpins the local plan that we currently have will be used for the new local plan. I mean, it won't be completely wasted work, of course. We're just kind of tweaking some aspects of it, removing some, adding others. So some of these studies will need to be updated, refreshed as new evidence comes in. The work done on local plan 2040 will be able to further inform our plan moving forward. I think we should look at it that way. At the moment, you know, an estimate of how long a new plan will take that's not been provided. We're reckoning about 3 years to progress that new local plan from where we are now to the end, but a lot of the work put in before will be used in that process. In terms of your question about parish councils, that's really important as well. We're in regular contact with the council, with communities who are progressing new or some of them starting to review their neighbourhood plans. So we'll continue to provide advice and guidance to them. Neighbourhood plans have been prepared in accordance with our adopted local plan, of course, of the 20 years, which will remain in place. So we'll contact parishes if we withdraw from the local plan to tell them the way forwards. But yeah, we'll be in constant communication. Does that answer all your questions?
Thank you.
Without wishing to embarrass Councillor Strachan, welcome, good evening.
Thank you, good evening, sorry.
Have you got any questions on this paper?
No, thank you.
No, super. Alex, any more observations that you wanted to make or rounding up at all? Brilliant. In which case, it feels like sentiment around this table is that we're support the proposals. I think the point about making rapid progress on the local plan, particularly if we can reuse existing elements of what we've got, would be much appreciated. Do you want to move to your recommendations?
Yeah, thank you. So we recommend the Cabinet notes the progress made in responding to initial comments and queries received from the examiner as part of the current progress of the plan submitted for examination in June 2022. Cabinet recommends to full council to approve and instruct officers to take all necessary steps, including giving the required notice under the Town and Country Planning, Local Planning England Regulation of 2012 to withdraw the Local Plan 2040 from examination in accordance of section 22 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. And finally, that the Cabinet recommends to full council to approve the draft statement of withdrawal that's set out in Appendix A on your pack for release. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. All those in favour, you can indicate it. Yeah, okay, that's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Farrell, appreciate it. And thank you, Patrick, as well. Right, next item on the agenda is item number 3, which is the Money Matters 23-24 financial monitoring. Councillor Strachan, over to you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you again for taking me out of order, and sorry that I was a little late. This is the Q1 financial report for our progress against the medium-term financial strategy, and I'm pleased to report that at this stage we have considerably greater financial resilience than some neighbouring authorities that may have made the news in recent hours. Although it's not all plain sailing, and so you do see high in the report that our general reserves are projected to be a little over £500,000 lower than we originally thought they would be. That is partly because of some cost savings that we've not achieved at the earlier point that we intended to, some additional income that we haven't achieved at the earlier point that we intended to, but also some significant inflationary pressures which are hitting us along with all other authorities. And I know that there are a number of authorities feeling the pinch. So far as collection performance goes, both council tax and business rates collection funds are in surplus. We were not necessarily projecting that they would be at this stage, and so there is some additional income coming from that direction. Our capital programme has increased against the approved budget, and you'll see the corresponding item at 2.2 is the increase in the Street Hay Community Centre budget, with £250,000 of additional Section 106 funding being committed to that project as we take the lead. And so I'm particularly pleased to see that come forwards. And I want to see this council continue to invest in the communities that we serve. And I think that's a very positive way of doing it. In terms of our investments, again, we are still advised that they should be long holds. And while we do see some turbulence on their performance, again, I remind the Cabinet that we are keeping those separate funds which should top those up if there is any volatility. And we do still see some return to performance on those as against the frankly drops that we saw in the previous 12 months. I'm also, and finally, because I'm going to go very, very high level here, pleased to see that we are continuing to pay our suppliers within 30 days. We're at 90.92%, so slightly above target. I still intend to see that at 100%. But I will give credit to the team for their efforts in dragging that metric up. I'm sure there will be questions, so I'll shut up and we'll deal with the meat on that. I know that if you have any questions, particularly regarding sundry debt, which is the big ticket movement, I know that Anthony has the data to put flesh on the bones in that if we need to.
Brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Open questions. Mike, over to you.
Thanks, Chairman. Good evening, Councillor Strachan. I just wanted to get a bit of reassurance from you, if I could. When we look at the performance competitive group budget 3.5, and we see a few issues that areas that savings haven't been achieved. I just wanted to get your sort of take on those as to whether, you know, the likelihood of those being able to be achieved moving forward. And then if I just wanted to draw your attention to the table at 3.2R, and this is in relation to the leisure centre and the earmark reserve figure that we had coming through from there, and the fact that whilst we've got a shortfall, and I know we put money aside because of the costs, energy costs, etc., with the leisure centre. Just a word of caution around the fact that the available balance there is only 120k left of that earmark money that we had put in there. So just wanted to just draw that to the attention of the cabinet, that the position of where we are on those. I'll probably stop there for now, Chairman, and then let somebody else have a go. But just have some clarification on those two.
I'm sure we'll appreciate that. Rob, over to you.
Yep, I am of course aware that we've eroded the available balance on the leisure centre reserve rather more rapidly than we'd intended to, and that those losses have been greater than we necessarily anticipated. I am reassured by officers handling that it should not be a long-term thing, that they were short-term pain for longer-term gain, and so at the moment that's not something that's causing us a huge amount of loss of sleep, but we do recognise that it's yes, it's an initial upfront hit. So far as the figures at 3.5 are concerned, and obviously Mike, we discussed this on a more informal basis, it is perhaps disappointing that the additional income and the savings haven't necessarily been able to come forwards as rapidly as we can do, although I think we understand that there are a number of different project pressures that have meant that all of these have lagged. It's not a situation that the finance brief would consider to be sustainable in the long term, but it is a situation that can be borne in the shorter term, given that we recognise that these will effectively make up for the lost income relatively rapidly once those are brought on stream. And so, while I would urge portfolio holders to bring forward those projects in their portfolios as quickly as they can, it's something that I think we keep a watching brief on far more than necessarily panicking at this stage.
Great, thank you, Rob. Janice.
Yeah, one of my first questions actually is the leisure centre one, so I think we can take that one as dealt with for my question. First of all, I think that the attention to detail in the report, and you've already alluded to some of the outside factors that have been in the press today, I think is really helpful actually, and being mindful of the fact that this is Q1, it would be remiss not to start off with showing some appreciation of the efforts that's gone into collections. Yes, we are in a surplus, but we've also got a very long list and a growing list of things that are going to be used to put that money to good use for the residents, which I think is worth acknowledging. A couple of questions that I have, one with regards to some of the strategic investments, and we can see some of the network loss at the moment that stands on those. I'm assuming that it's a long-term viewpoint, but if we could just get some clarification on those. We've also got a significant portion of money from the disabled facilities grants as well. So if I could have some clarity on that one, please. And lastly, if I can also just bring into Appendix D and looking at our comparisons for exposure to risk, I think it might be worthwhile as well making some comments on those, notwithstanding the events of today also, if I may, Chair. Thank you.
Did you get all those, Rob?
3 for 1.
I did, so as I touched on the strategic investments, and yes, we do have the reserve that doesn't quite cover book loss at the moment, but is set up to control against the volatility of that sort of investment. The advice that we've received from Arden Close, our Treasury Management Advisors, is still that is a long-term hold, and I don't believe that has been changed at any point. I'm sure that Anthony will put me right if I misstep. Disabled facilities grants have long been a bugbear, certainly for the nearly 4 and a bit years that I've been in this brief. I think slipped huge amounts of disabled facilities grants into subsequent years in every single budget I've brought to this council. That has in the past been due to underperformance or non-performance by external suppliers. As a council, we've now taken that in-house. We exercise a great deal more control. We are aware that there is a backlog that I understand that moves are in place, and I see a lot from the chief executive to catch up with that backlog. And that subject to the availability of actual contractors to carry out the works, they will be brought through as quickly as we can. So far as the risk appetite and risk position is concerned, I don't think I could do any better than calling on Anthony to deal with that, given that it's his assessment. And ultimately, if we have to issue a section 114, which we're not in the situation we're going to just yet, it is he who signs that off. So I'm actually going to invite Anthony to bring you up to speed on his assessment of the risk.
So there's a general risk to the council, and then there's the specific around the investment. So from a general risk point of view, we're not in the situation of a lot of councils, mainly the and unitaries. There are a number of reasons why there are difficulties, but there are some key themes. They're subject to demand pressures around adult social care, children's services. That's something we're not. And they're not able to say no in a lot of cases because there's statutory targets and requirements around that. And in addition to that, they're subject to inflation and the funding changes that the government haven't implemented or implemented in some parts haven't always been matched by the demand side of it. So they've had gaps and they're growing. In most of the cases, this council's not in that situation. Yet really the only demand-led service we've got is homelessness. So from a general risk point of view, whilst we're subject to inflation and things like that, we're not subject to the same significant risks that they are. Just on investments, touching on that, I suppose our risk if you look at the metrics here that Arden Close used to compare, we're probably in a good position in terms of the security score that they give compared to others, and how diversified we are and the proportion exposed to bailing, and that's if a bank gets into trouble, the creditors provide extra funding or lose the funding they've provided rather than the government stepping in. The only area where we've got additional risk, and it's the one that we've picked up and Councillor Strachan's, is the fact we've got strategic investments in place, which have got book losses at the moment. Now, when we originally when we made the decision to go into these type of investments, we set up this earmark reserve to manage the volatility. Now, for most part, that reserve has been at a higher value than the book loss, but recently, with the volatility that's there is a book loss. What we've been doing to manage that risk is using some of the additional income from interest rate hikes to boost that in reserve, so that we'll get to a point where it matches the book loss, and therefore, in the event that we do have to crystallise those losses, there won't be an impact on the council services and general reserves. So that's the risk mitigation we've put in place to manage that.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, just on the disabled facilities grants, I know how important that service is to Cabinet and to the council as a whole. And so I thought I'd just give you a couple of stats, if that's okay. I think our general grant is about 1.2 million a year. We had a significant underspend that we took back from the previous supplier. The first quarter was a little bit about learning our way. It's a new service in the company. And we've distributed £250,000 at the moment. But more significantly for me, last month we awarded £80,000. Our target is to get to £100,000 a month, in which case we will be spending out the grant on an annual basis. So we're nearly there in the first 5 or 6 months. As Councillor Strachan said, the difficulty we're having at the moment is finding contractors to deliver the work. So there's another arm to the company, our capital works team that are now looking at whether or not we can deliver some of those as well to speed up the delivery of those grants also. Hopefully, that's going in the direction the cabinet intended when they made the decision to bring it back in-house. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, very useful. Thank you. Mike.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just on the DFG, I mean, that's a really good place for us to be in, because I know there'll be many in this room that will know that we've struggled for numbers of years not being able to get those grants allocated, and the monies have been there but not been able to do it. So the fact we've already back in-house, I think, is the right move, and we've got a handle on it now, so we can make sure that it does get spent, goes in the right places. I just wanted to mention the fact on our treasury management investments, we're getting a good yield of 4%. That's really good, and long may that continue, because we need 4.4, sorry, because that's important to us going forward for the monies that we have in reserves. I just wanted to then just mention on the risk rating, and it doesn't seem to make much difference how much lobbying we do of central government around the fact of our financial situation and the uncertainty around lots of areas that government are still debating upon. But if we look at D and the impact, the likelihood of red in relation to the increased localisation of business rates, business rate reset, and the review of needs and resources. Anthony, I'm amazed you sleep at night, because these are big areas that, if there are fundamental changes to, will have massive impact on local authorities, particularly at our tier level. And I just wondered, whether you've got any more insight, or whether what the news is, or any information coming forward that gives us any more reassurance that government will actually do the right thing in relation to these areas. Thank you, Chair.
That's a very unfair question.
The answer is no, not really. I mean, government policy at the moment is to implement change, whatever that change is, from 1st of April 25. The reality of the situation is that's the first year after a general election, and most of the informed thinking is that isn't deliverable. It won't be a priority for a government of whatever colour. So maybe it slips a year, maybe it slips 2 years. It may not even be implemented, or implemented in a completely different form. I suppose one of the positives with what's happening with the larger number of 114s being issued is it's starting to raise with government and the public the implications of some of these things not being implemented and not providing longer term funding solutions. It's starting to have a real impact on service delivery and service resilience. And whilst it's not the best way of raising the profile, it may be it's the only way we can do it, because we've tried lobbying, and we've sent 2 letters recently to MPs and got replies back, but all that's comes back is a restatement of the policy position.
Yeah, but just to top on that, one of the things that was interesting in one of those letters was it was highly unlikely that we would see business rates localisation brought through within this government, although of course none of us actually know how long that's going to be. And I'll say again, and I think I said in every previous time that I've given a financial report to Cabinet, uncertainty is the biggest problem that we have in handling local government finance, and this is one of the biggest things that I think we're seeing in council financial failure around the country. The failure to give us that certainty that we need to plan our financial affairs long term is giving us and other councils real headaches. And once again, I call on government to give us what we need. That means that we can do what we do best as effectively as we possibly can.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, Anthony. Any more questions on this paper?
I just wanted to finish on a positive note, Chairman. I mean, it is a fantastic report, and we're in a much better position than many authorities in this country. So, thank you to Anthony and his team and all the people that put all the information together, because it's clear, it's concise, we know exactly where we are, and it's all in front of us. So, appreciate the fact that, and appreciate your honesty there, Rob, in relation to the uncertainty that we face as a council. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Rob, over to you for your recommendation, then, please.
Thank you, Leader. I move recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 standing in my name.
So, thank you. All those in favour can show it. Brilliant. Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you, Rob. And then staying with you, straight on to the council tax reduction scheme as a discount. Rob, and you're joined by Lynn.
I am indeed, and I'd like to thank Lizzie and the team for the report, and I can't zoom into that, so we'll just ask it. Members, you may remember, and those of you who weren't on cabinet at the time, you might have seen from an external perspective, from a scrutiny perspective, the journey that we went on over the 2 years leading up to April, when we launched the new council tax reduction scheme for working age claimants. And the overarching ambition of all of that is to make it as simple as possible for the customer and to radically streamline the administration for the council, so that the maximum number of people receive the maximum amount of financial support in the shortest possible amount of time, and to really make sure that that money from here gets to the people who need it most, or those discounts from here get to the people who need it most as quickly as possible. But at the moment, the scheme is currently operated as a benefit, and this paper is hopefully a technical paper that turns it into a discount, much in the way as the single person's discount goes, which makes it far more simple to administrate for us as a council and far more simple and rapid for people to access it. It does that by reducing the back office functions. In fact, I'm told that we may be able to use automation for some elements of it, by effectively passporting those who are claiming universal credit, because the Department for Work and Pensions have already seen a lot of the documentation that we would otherwise have to request. But it also adds a little audit hook that makes sure that the governance of that scheme is still robust, and that we can still have assurance that it's not being exploited. The intention is to roll this out from November, and to really focus on getting our communications right for the next 2 months, so that we make absolutely sure that people who are affected by the change understand what's happening, understand what we're going to do, and hopefully we'll have the minimum possible for them to do, so that we can roll that out. Happy to take any questions if there's anything I can deal with. I know that Lizzie is well armed to deal with anything as well.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Mr. Smith, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I know we've talked about this paper quite a lot between us, and I fully support this. I think anything that makes it more seamless and easier to make this discount happen, and to also, probably even more importantly, it's people that need it the most. I think it has my full support. You did mention it. The only thing I would just urge is can we make use of as much technology as possible to make this whole process as efficient as we possibly can. So when we've got the sort of the 85% simple case, we can use technology just to do end to end and get those processes immediately. I think that's really important. But fully supportive. Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. The crux of this is that we have a core of highly trained benefits professionals here in the council. We want them dealing with things that they are trained to deal with, the complex stuff, rather than being bogged down in the nitty-gritty mundane stuff that we can get through relatively simply. And by dealing with this as a benefit, it takes away that evidential requirement. It takes away the assessment requirement as much as it possibly can do, and should really streamline that process.
Thanks.
Thanks very much for the information on there. I too very supportive. I think anything that can help to streamline the process and certainly avoid duplication of work, what's already been done in other agencies such as the DWP, can only be of benefit. I am assured again and reassured, having sat on the Audit and Standards Committee as well, that there is an audit element that is going to be taking place within this particular process. So I am reassured by that part as well. Just a quick question on the communications that's going to be sent out and the level of support that we're going to be able to potentially provide for any of the residents who are going to be using that particular discount. Would be my first question. And I know I've already been in communication previously with Lizzie with regards to care leavers being able to access some of the facilities. In the past, I'm aware it's been a problem when we've looked at the support of those that are leaving care and going into some form of independent living when it comes down to council tax in particular. Very nuanced, very niche potential part, but just so as we don't forget some of those elements as well. So a couple of questions and comments there. Thank you.
There's always one question that I can't answer. So I'm going to hand that one over to Lizzie in terms of the operational planning, and hopefully she'll be able to give you a satisfactory answer.
I think the beauty of the scheme is that rather than having assessors being bound up in doing basically manual data processing, it would free up those assessors to be able to help more vulnerable people face to face on the telephone and give many more hours to being able to do that, which I think is one of the key ambitions of this scheme. So it will mean that we can provide that one-to-one support to people who are struggling, who may not understand the system or may just need that extra little bit of support. With regards to the care leavers, we are taking that up with the county council so we can make sure that we ensure that we get that help to those people who are leaving care as quickly as possible and make it as simple as possible. So that's something that we need to progress with to ensure that is as smooth as it can be. And no doubt I'll be in touch with you to discuss that.
Happy with that? Yeah, brilliant. Anyone, Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I too support this implementation of this. Anything that, as Councillor Smith said, the speed of the process of people getting the discount is always worth doing. I just want to just touch on the fact that I know it's going to be an online form, but and I'm sure I must have read this somewhere in the paper that for those that aren't online, there'll still be an opportunity to do it by paper or on the telephone. And on the telephone, who picks up the charge for the telephone? Is it us or does the customer pick up the? Thank you.
So yes, so very much more simplified. So at the moment, if somebody tries to apply on the telephone, it's a much more complicated process. Whereas because of the reduction in the evidence requirements, it will be far quicker and swifter. So we'll be able to help them far better over the telephone and even over live chat, which is something that we're exploring. So most definitely, customers will be able to be supported over the phone.
Brilliant. Thank you. Just one quick question from me, Rob, was about it's good to see we consulted with Citizen Advice Bureau, Job Centre, etc., and leadership team, all fully supported, as am I. It says that it tells us that all the people who are supportive, and then it says we consulted with Audis and they advised accordingly. What was their view? Are they happy? Are they broadly supportive with caveats? Or?
My recollection of that audit meeting was that it was broad support. I don't remember any particular dissenting voices or any major concerns being raised. I'm looking for a shake, not a shake of the head, because I've been to bed since that meeting.
So a number of the councils have implemented this very successfully, and Audit are very much happy to watch and monitor the scheme with us in close collaboration. Their view at the moment is that we progress as we've suggested, but if any of the audit requirements need to be tightened up because there are any concerns, then we'll work with them to make sure that that is delivered, and we will be reporting back to the Audit Member Standards Committee with regards to that. So we'll make sure that we keep a close watch on this.
Brilliant, thank you.
I wonder whether it may be worth us reaching out to Councillor Ho and to Andrew just to make absolutely sure they're happy with how this will be audited and how this will be monitored.
Agreed. Great, there's no further questions then. Back over to you then, Rob, for your recommendations.
I move recommendations 2.1 and 2.2, standing in my name.
Great, all those in favour, show it. Yeah, that looks like a unanimous decision. Thank you very much, Councillor Strachan and Lizzie as well. Right, final item on the agenda tonight then is the Transforming Planning Service proposal. I believe I'm joined by Artemis Christofi, who's behind me. Good evening, Artemis.
Hi everybody.
I'm just making sure that you can hear and speak because all the questions will be directed at you, Artemis, not at me. So I think everyone, cabinet and leadership team are fully aware of this plan. We want to be unashamedly, we want to make sure that we've got the best planning service in the country. We, or many of us around this table, will have had this conversation several times before about how we create the best planning service in the country. And I remember a few years ago, we had proposed to essentially throw money at the problem and see if it went away. Surprise, surprise, it didn't. We have recognised that we do have processes that perhaps add additional friction to the planning process. We aren't always as focused on performance standards, perhaps we could be. And we do have extensions of time regularly, which fudge the numbers somewhat on our planning, and we want to eradicate that. We want to offer our non-major and our household applicants a real robust standard and fast track service to make their project timescales essentially for what they're doing, as well as eradicating those extensions of times that I just touched on. I want to give residents more certainty about their planning applications, as well as, and let's not forget it, This is a key driver of our local economy, really important to us to drive our local economy. So let's make sure that we are laser focused on that. The proposal suggests essentially dedicated teams for our major developments, for non-major developments, and for household applicants, helping to run those on separate streams and unclog the system to help speed up decision making. There's a raft of changes in there focused around eradicating those wasteful processes. Councillor Smith would be pleased to know we're looking at introducing technology where we can, not to decide the contentious planning applications, but where there are simple, straightforward processes where we can use technology. Let's use it and free up. Very similar to the previous paper, if we can free up people to focus on the more difficult applications and use technology to focus on the simple ones, then everyone wins. So ambition of the restructure, right resources in the right places to deliver the best results. There is no slimming down, cutting back, anything like that. This is a reorganisation in the truest sense of the word. It leaves the door open to put a team, likely the major developments team, into the LATCO. And this paper today asks for your approval to carry out that transformation project, including that restructure, and then to delegate the final tweaks and decisions to the cabinet member, assistant director, and 151 officer. Happy to take any questions on that. Equally, Artemis will be very happy to take questions on it as well. Stunned in the silence, Alex.
No question, you'd be pleased to hear, just a comment, just to say how I really like this paper. I think the ambition is great, it's really dynamic. I particularly want to draw attention to the planning school, so working with Birmingham and Westminster universities to effectively get the new bright generation that have gone and learned all about planning and get them to sort out some of our applications. I think it's a really, really good paper. I love the fast tracking householder team. Splitting it up is really important. So yeah, just my support, leader. I think it's a really dynamic, good paper.
Brilliant, thanks. Janice.
Know that many of you will know from my comments previously, when it comes down to planning, I welcome any type of possible progress when it comes down to the planning department. I will keep my questions to the paper, obviously. And first of all, I do think that the actual recruitment side is a fantastic way forward. I think in today's society, in a huge amount of different industries, it is the way forwards. This is the way it needs to be done. And I'm hoping that that is also something that's going to be delivering us with some continuity of staff within the department. So that would be my first question, if that's something that we're hoping that we'll realise as well. As far as the actual with regards to the fast track and the charging, just some information how we've arrived at those figures, if that's possible, please. How, if they compare to other local authorities. I think there's some thought that it might well be that given the price point that everybody might decide to want to do that. And it doesn't, it becomes the norm as opposed to something that is there to enhance the process. So that would be another question. And then finally, if I may, I think a lot of the things when we come around to planning is about how we communicate and collaborate with others who are stakeholders in that particular process. And if there's some also ambition about how we can maybe improve some of those conversations, whether it's with local agents, in planning forums, applicants, how we can possibly endeavour to improve on those, if I may. Thank you.
Brilliant. I'm going to hand straight over to Artemis then for the in terms of how we arrived at the number.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so in terms of the staffing query and the continuity, yes. So one of the things that I've been doing over the last 3 to 4 years is promoting planning apprentices coming into planning authorities. And I can tell you that the last 3 years I've brought in over 20 planning apprentices into planning with no quite often no planning background. And what happens with the system that I've got, the formula that I've got, is that we embed them into planning, but they get to have a taste of other departments, other elements of planning. So it could be policy, it could be planning enforcement, it could be other areas as well. So they get a robust feel and access and experience to other parts of local government that a lot of authorities aren't doing. And in fact, I'm now talking to a lot of authorities about how we're doing it, including the Planning Advisory Service, because they're very interested in how I've come to this formula and how successful it's been. And I can tell you that of the first cohort that I brought in 4 years ago, they're still in planning, they're now qualified, and they're still loving what they're doing, and they all stay in touch with me because I like to see how they're progressing. So I'm very confident that it will be a big success here. And with the links that we now have, in particular with Westminster University, I think that will continue and will grow going forward. So I hope that provides some comfort in terms of that element. In terms of the figures that have been reached, so again, this is something that I have been doing for a few years now. There are a couple of authorities across the country that have implemented those, including the figures that I've come up with, and have been doing it successfully. I think the one that really stands out will be the London Borough of Redbridge, who have been doing it for a couple of years now. We worked very closely to bring that together. And you know, there haven't been, obviously you do get the odd person that doesn't like it, you will always get that, but overall it has vastly improved the service for those authorities that have brought it in, not just for the residents and the applicants, developers, but also for planning officers and all the internal staff that we have as well, where we are more focused on delivery, and we can cut out a lot of the time that is lost when trying to process applications. And in terms of communications, again, very much focused on delivery of communications, improving relations. And you might have seen within the report that, you know, our planning complaints, although hereditary have been quite high, have come down quite significantly, and the number of compliments that we've received in the past year have gone skyrocketed. And I think we were the best in the whole council in terms of that for the last year, and we want to improve that. For me, I always say that, you know, planning is always at the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and for me it is very much about customer service that we provide. So some of the things that I am looking to do is to create relations and improve relations with our parish councils. And I'm looking to set up some forums where they can come and have a voice and discuss things with us. And again, one of the more recent things that you'll have seen is our member forums and drop-in sessions as well. So it's an opportunity for all members to come in and to talk to planners about any concerns or queries that they may have. And one of the other things that I want to do is also do an agent developers forum. So depending on what happens with this, then we will engage with them and sort of bring them up to speed with things and get them more involved with some of the things that we're doing as well.
Brilliant. There's just one question about how we arrived at those fees as well. I think this was the outstanding question.
So this has been developed over a few years. So again, as part of the work that I've done with other authorities and bringing in the fees, so this has kind of been a try and tested formula that we've brought in. So the fees are very similar to those that are doing similar things in other authorities that I've worked in. So this is where we've kind of trialed other fees, they've failed, we've implemented new fees. So what I've brought in here are the fees that have worked and have been successful in a few other authorities.
Thank you. Yeah, back to Janice.
Thank you very much indeed for that. That's absolutely wonderful to hear. With regards to the recruitment, so it is in the paper as well that when we bring in apprentices that they actually stay within the authority. So that's the part that I'll be quite keen to make sure is that you know, there is some time when they are obviously building up that experience, but then it's delivered within this authority. And then just to finally finish on to say, I did begin by saying about I am really supportive and welcoming of anything that brings some progress. So that is also unequivocal, and I think involving the parish councils is absolutely critical in that case. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Janice. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Generally, I'm really supportive of these changes and these proposals. I've just got a couple of areas of concern that I'm sure you'll be able to put my mind at rest on. First of all, Artemis, that's fantastic to hear that you're going to be working with the parish council, because we've been saying for a long time that one of the issues we have in parish and town councils is the fact that members are not feel that they're qualified enough to make recommendations or to make statements that come back on planning applications, and anything that can help them in fulfilling their responsibility as a consultee will be good. So I look forward to you rolling all that out. I'm also pleased to see that some of the language in the report has changed, so that some of the ambiguity is not there now, so we can see exactly what's happening. My only, just the other one little concern I have is the fact that we're going to be processing a lot more applications now, hopefully, and we're going to be able to acknowledge and respond in a much quicker timescale. I just want to make sure that the process we have will be robust, and will there be an opportunity for you or for someone in senior position to perhaps randomly check applications that have been granted or refused, just to make sure that we are following the correct guidelines. And then the other one is just to make sure, and I think Councillor Sylvester all mentioned this, it's the communication. We've got to make sure that the communication to our parish and town councils is such that they understand exactly what we're trying to do, and it doesn't affect their right to be able to respond in the normal timelines. And then finally, Chair, if I just may, on the large scale applications, and I'm sure, I think it's still a practice, we need to make sure that ward members are involved at early stages of any conversations we have with developers, just to make sure they're the people on the ground who know what the issues are. We just need to make sure that process is in place so that they have an opportunity to meet with the developers early on in the stage of bringing forward a major development. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no, not at all. So on the third point, fully agree, and I think that's the case and won't change because of this paper. Artemis, I'll pass over to you for the first 2 points that Councillor Wilcox made.
Yeah, so if I picked it up correctly, so in terms of spot checking applications, I'm doing that already. I don't think that's really something that was done at Lichfield before. So that is something that's already happening. So I will randomly pick planning applications and then scrutinise them to death from A to Z, and then discuss it with the case officer and their team leader, particularly if I find something that I don't like. So that is already happening, and that will continue going forward. We are a more collaborative planning team, I would say, so there is a lot more open discussion on cases, and with the more junior members of staff, getting them more involved early on so that they can learn and see sort of best practice is key. In particular, but also for the more seasoned officers as well, because sometimes, you know, you can get into habits and sometimes you need a bit of a refresh, particularly as planning legislation seems to change every 5 minutes as well. So we need to be on the pulse for that. What was the other thing? Sorry, I've lost my train of thought now.
So, Mike,
I think the Chair answered it. It was about major applications to make sure the board members are involved at the early stage.
Absolutely, totally agree with that. And one of the things that we do when developers come to us now and they want to discuss cases is we do talk about the engagement with key stakeholders and making sure that they timetable in that consultation with members. I mean, there is more that we could do, but particularly, you know, in some authorities, we sometimes might bring in board members into the pre-app discussion just so that they get an overview of particular applications. That's not something that Lichfield has done in the past, but that is something that we could explore in the future, provided obviously that, you know, we're always mindful of not being predetermined, etc. So that is something that we could consider in the future, and it does work in other authorities if it's carefully managed.
Great, thank you, Artemis. Mark, does that answer your questions?
I've just got one finally on financials. Are we looking at this should hopefully bring us in a sort of increased income from the planning service?
Absolutely,
Right,
Yes.
I'm not going to be drawn on how much, no, I'm just.
Andy, over to you, councillor Smith.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, just out of interest at this point, under 3.3, it talks about the complaints we've received. In terms of complaints, I'm just interested actually, because it kind of helps us move forward. What are they complaints about the processing time of applications, or are they complaints about the outcome that people don't like, or a bit of both?
It's usually a bit of both, really. I think more often than not, it's about the length of time sometimes applications might take. Understandably, people do get frustrated with some timescales that are in place, but also, following COVID, etc. And this is a national problem. Recruitment and retention is an issue. So sometimes an application may end up with 2 or 3 case officers, which inevitably causes a delay in that process. So that's I would say the balance is tilted that way.
Okay, so the point there then is our efforts to have the fast track service and splitting the service, etc., will absolutely help that problem.
Absolutely,
Okay, brilliant.
absolutely, yeah.
I just wanted to go back on Councillor Wilcox's comment about the additional finance. I think the really important thing for us there is it will enable us to put investment into areas so we can speed up particularly major applications and make sure that we are delivering those at the speed we want to deliver them, and making sure that those don't suffer delays. So that additional income will just ensure that the service is more robust.
Very good point. Thank you, Lisa. I just got a couple more.
That's you, Andy.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, like Janice, I had a look at the proposed sort of fast track premium gold service, and I really like the idea because people's circumstances are different. There may be some situations where there's no particular rush, or there may be somewhere they've absolutely got to get something done quickly. I really like that, but the same as Janice, I did feel that maybe the price point isn't high enough to make a difference, because I'm guessing with the whole expense of either building a house or an extension or whatever is a development, that gold premium number we're talking is a small amount on top of that. So we may need to look at that price point, I suspect. I think that's it's stuck in a sea job, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And then back on my old favourite, the technology. I know you mentioned it, Doug, to prep me a bit, but I do think there's 2 types of technology we talk about here. I think there's that sort of communication workflow type technology when someone submits an application. Often as ward members, we get emails saying, I submit this application and I haven't heard anything for so many weeks or whatever. So there's that one, there's that comms back, there's that sort of automation bit where like a Domino's pizza type tracker, if you like, yeah, when you've ordered your pizza, you see when it's in the oven, when it's being baked, all that sort of stuff, yeah. So much better comms automated, where people understand, and developers, anyone who made application understands exactly where it's at the process. As soon as it moves on, they get some sort of automated response. I think that's really important, because people sometimes don't mind things taking longer as long as there's comms. I think that's important. Then there's the real fun, exciting bit. I know people think I'm a bit crazy when I talk about this sort of stuff, but I'm pretty sure that there must be automation software out now that can take what I would call the 80% sort of standard planning type applications and do an end-to-end automated reject or approve on them. I just did a quick Google search actually, and the Alan Turing Institute in 2020 did a case study on entitled "Can we automate the UK's planning system using AI?" So it could be worth the butchers at that to see what is the answer. No, going to say. No. The answer was I don't know what the answer was, but I'll listen. I'll read it. But anyway, and it may not even be AI, but some clever processing, and I know that means, I know the tough bit is getting the data in a structured fashion. If we can get the data submitted to it in a structured fashion, there's a standard way to do it. Then I'm sure the software we can apply to do that. But I think that would really mean then we can get those through, so we can get our planning experts on the tougher cases and get more time spent on those.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Anyone, Rob?
Thanks to certainly Andy and Janice for picking up on the fast track point about the fact that the relatively small fee, the premium in the context of the actual cost of construction, may result, and I see it's not picked up in the risks, in the service being swamped, and in that refund policy which will be emergent becoming rather relevant. So I just wonder whether you can give me some reassurance on the extent to which we've looked at that. The other, and I hear what Andy's saying about the use of AI, but with respect, that very applicant customer focused and doesn't necessarily pick up any parish or objector elements. And I think that's a valuable point that we as a planning service need to recognise, that there are often two sides to relatively small householder applications, and they're often more contentious, and that is the role of the objector. Can you give me some reassurance that the governance of call-ins and of parish consultation has been recognised, and the way that that will be headed off? Because 5 working days is a very, very quick turnaround, potentially, or certainly given that that's going to fall without parish cycles.
I can give the assurances on that, and given the recommendations before us tonight is really to say yes, go and look at how this works, and go and look at where you can delegate and where you don't want to delegate. The rights of individuals, residents, parish councils will trump anything in terms of transformation. So that will guide us, and the transformation will follow after.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on this? No, I think just one from me, and whether it's Artemis or Simon who takes this, I suppose that the question for me is, how do we know we've been successful? So at what point and how do we measure, was it a success, was it not successful, are we 50% now, etc.?
Thank you, Chair. I'll attempt to have a go at this then. So for me, it's about resident satisfaction, so user satisfaction, speed of processing, a reduction in errors, that type of thing. So we will have clear indicators as well to be able to identify.
I think it'd be really, really beneficial for us as part of that transformation piece to agree those metrics up front, so that we can turn around in 6, 9, 12 months and look back and say, yeah, we succeeded. Mike, did you have another question?
I just got one other point about the review of the section 106 process and SIP. And I welcome the fact that we're going to sort of have a much more sort of strict approach to it, and make sure that is agreed early on, and that those funds are in, and we're not waiting and they're not hanging around, because it will benefit the local community. So we've got to make sure. And again, I think in that process, I think there was a process where ward members will obviously again be involved where development happens in their patch in relation to any allocation of CIL 106, etc. So I welcome the fact that we're going to sort of speed that part of the process along as well too.
Brilliant, thank you. Go on, this is going to be the last one.
Yeah, just sneak one in there, because you mentioned about the metrics on there, but I wondered when it would be looked at again, so we could be able to see what sort of time frame that we thought would be best to review, basically, whether it comes back here or to another appropriate committee.
So I've got a view that anything less than 6 months isn't going to give us sufficient data. Equally, I wouldn't want to leave it a year, so 9 months feels about the right timeline. Simon's saying yes. Is that because you agree, or because I've just said it?
It's because I agree.
Yeah. There you go. 9 months before summer holidays next year, I think feels like a sensible time. Brilliant. Okay, in which case recommendations are at 2.1 for 2.2. Before you. Brilliant. That's unanimous. Thank you all. Thank you for attending tonight. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you all.